They searched her bags twice, once at the train station, once at the checkpoint outside the city. They found nothing. No weapons, no documents, no codes. Just children's drawings, crude houses with crooked roofs, stick figures holding hands, a sun in the corner of the page smiling for no reason. The officer flipped through them with bored contempt. Then he laughed, handed them back, and waved her through. He never noticed that every line, every careless scribble, every childish mistake was placed with deadly precision. And by the time he realized what had passed through his hands, entire battalions were already moving toward their deaths. She was not a soldier. She never carried a gun. She never wore a uniform. But she smuggled maps through occupied Europe, hidden inside the drawings of children. And this is how she did it. Before the war, her life was painfully ordinary. She lived in a narrow apartment above a tailor shop, the kind that smelled of chalk dust and steam. Her mornings were quiet. Her afternoons were filled with the sound of children arguing over pencils and colors. She was a schoolteacher. Not famous, not influential, just trusted. Parents trusted her with their children, children trusted her with their secrets, and occupying forces trusted her because she looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, harmless. When the invasion came, it came fast. One week, the flags changed. The next week, the language on the street did too. New rules appeared overnight. Curfews, ration cards, papers demanded at every corner. And then the arrests began. At first, it was soldiers, then officials, then teachers. She watched colleagues disappear between one class and the next. She learned to lower her eyes when trucks passed. She learned to not ask questions. But she also learned something else. The occupiers were obsessed with maps. Roads, bridges, rail lines. They guarded them like treasure. They burned old charts and replaced them with their own, because whoever controlled the maps controlled the war. The resistance knew this. They needed accurate layouts of troop positions, supply routes, hidden artillery placements. But paper was dangerous. Ink was dangerous. Anything that looked official could get you killed. Carriers were caught daily, shot in alleys, hung in public squares. And then someone noticed her classroom. Children were allowed to draw. No one questioned that. No one suspected it. And children's art traveled freely. Parents sent it to relatives, teachers carried it between schools, inspectors barely glanced at it. That was the crack in the wall. The first time she was approached, she thought it was a test. A man waited for her after class, pretending to read a newspaper. He spoke without looking up. He said her name once. He said her brother's name once. Then he folded the paper and left. Inside the newspaper was a simple request. Would she be willing to help copy information? Not write it. Not carry it openly. Just copy. She didn't answer that day. She didn't sleep that night. By morning, she knew the truth. Refusing would not make her safe. It would only make her watched. So she agreed. They didn't give her maps. They gave her instructions, lines, angles, distances. She memorized them the way she memorized lesson plans. Repetition, discipline. Then she went home and sharpened her pencils. Children's drawings are supposed to be wrong. That's why they're perfect. A crooked road is still a road. A rectangle with windows is still a building. She taught her students to draw what they saw outside: the church, the river bend, the train yard beyond the fence. She corrected nothing. She only guided. Move the tree a little left. Make the bridge longer. Add another window. To a child, it meant nothing. To the resistance, it meant everything. Each picture became a layered document. What looked like play was reconnaissance. She never kept the originals. They were sent home with the children. From there, collected by couriers posing as uncles, cousins, friends of the family. She memorized which child drew which area, which drawing showed which street, which scribble marked a checkpoint. If she was ever arrested, there would be nothing to find. But danger crept closer every week. One morning, soldiers entered the school unannounced, boots on wooden floors, rifles held casually, but fingers close to the trigger. They said there had been reports. Someone was spreading information. They searched desks. They searched cupboards. They searched her bag. They found crayons, paper, lunch wrapped in cloth. They left angry and embarrassed. She stood still for 10 minutes after they were gone, waiting for her legs to remember how to work. After that, the drawings became more complex, and so did the risks. Rail schedules were added, truck counts, fuel depots disguised as playground equipment. The resistance began relying on her. Too much. She asked them to stop. They said they couldn't. Other routes were compromised. Other teachers were arrested. She was the last clean channel. Then the children started asking questions. Why do soldiers stand near the bridge? Why can't we draw the factory anymore? She answered carefully. She reminded them to draw only what they could see. She never told them why. Because if a child knows a secret, it stops being one. The occupiers changed tactics. They brought in specialists, men trained to spot patterns. Drawings were checked more carefully. Some were confiscated. One afternoon, a boy didn't come home. His drawing never arrived. The next day, his desk was empty. She understood the message, but she kept going, because by then, the maps were no longer about information. They were about timing. An operation was coming, a large one. The resistance needed exact positions, exact measurements. One mistake could send men straight into machine gun fire. She was asked to carry the drawings herself, across a border. She said no. Then she saw the alternative. Another courier, already shaking, already watched. So she said yes. She packed the drawings neatly between lesson papers, 40 sheets, 40 lives' worth of ink and crayon. At the border, they stopped her, asked about her profession. She said teacher. They asked what she carried. She said homework. They laughed. They searched everything, except the drawings, because no one fears a child's son smiling in the corner of the page. She crossed the border with shaking hands and a calm face. That night, she handed the drawings over, and for the first time, she cried, because she knew part 2 was coming. And next time, the enemy would not laugh. She was not given time to rest. By morning, new instructions arrived. The drawings had confirmed everything the resistance feared. Troop concentrations were heavier than expected. New artillery had been positioned overnight. Rail traffic had doubled. The occupiers were preparing for something big. So was the resistance. And now she was no longer just a courier. She was a liability. Safe houses were burned. Names were compromised. Someone had talked. She noticed it in the small things first. The butcher no longer met her eyes. The woman downstairs stopped returning greetings. The street had grown quiet in a way that felt intentional. When a city goes silent, it means someone is listening. They told her to stop teaching, to disappear for a while. She refused. A teacher who suddenly vanishes invites questions. A teacher who keeps showing up looks normal. Normal had become her armor. But the children felt the change. They drew more carefully now. They watched the windows when soldiers passed. One girl asked if the war was getting closer. She said no. She lied well. The next delivery would be the last before the operation. Everything depended on it. This time, the drawings showed kill zones, ambush routes, fallback positions, entire neighborhoods reduced to lines and colors. She memorized them all. If the papers were lost, she would become the map. At the checkpoint, they separated her from the children. That had never happened before. An officer with polished boots and tired eyes flipped through the drawings slowly, too slowly. He stopped on one page, a bridge, too straight, too accurate. He looked up. She met his eyes without blinking. He asked which child drew it. She answered immediately, no hesitation, no correction. He studied her face, then the drawing again. Outside, a truck engine idled. Time stretched thin. Finally, he handed it back, not with laughter this time, with suspicion. She walked away knowing she would not be lucky twice. That night, she was followed. Footsteps echoed behind her, always matching her pace. She turned corners slowly, deliberately. At her door, a hand grabbed her arm. They did not shout. They did not strike. They said her name softly. Interrogation rooms are designed to feel temporary. Bare walls, a single chair, a desk with nothing on it. They want you to believe you will leave soon. They asked about the drawings, about the children, about the men who collected them. She answered only what was already known: a teacher, homework, art projects. They showed her confiscated drawings, spread across the table like evidence. They pointed out patterns, asked her to explain them. She said, "Children copy what they see. They imitate each other." They smiled. Then they brought in a child, a boy, 12 years old, one of hers. He was shaking. He clutched a folded drawing in his hands. They asked him who told him what to draw. She spoke before he could. She said she did. She said it was all her idea. She said the children knew nothing. The boy looked at her, confused. Then he understood. He said nothing. That silence saved his life. It condemned hers. She was moved before dawn. No trial, no paperwork. The war had no patience left. In the cell, she traced maps in her mind, routes she would never walk, bridges she had already crossed for the last time. She wondered if the drawings had arrived, if the operation would still go ahead. She wondered if it would matter. It mattered. The resistance struck 2 nights later. Supply lines cut, convoys ambushed, an advance stalled long enough for hundreds to escape. Men lived because a bridge had been drawn straight. She never saw the outcome. Her name did not appear on lists. There was no grave. After the war, schools reopened. New teachers arrived. In one classroom, old drawings were found behind a cabinet. Faded suns, broken houses, careless lines. A former student recognized one. He remembered her voice, her calm, the way she never corrected mistakes. The drawings were passed quietly to historians, then to museums. They are still there, labeled simply, Children's Art, 1943. No medals were issued, no speeches made, but armies still study those maps. Because sometimes The most powerful weapon in a war is a pencil, held by a child, guided by a woman who refused to look away.